Good afternoon. This is the Dvar Torah on Parshas Emor, and in addition to being the Dvar Torah on Parshas Emor, this is also when I'm recording Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of Omer between Pesach and Shavuos. It's considered a very holy day. Many people in Israel, hundreds of thousands, have headed up to daven the Keva, the tomb of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar. Now, very interesting. Why is Lag BaOmer celebrated? First of all, it was the end of, there was a plague against the students of Rabbi Akiva, wound up killing 24,000 of them over an extended period. It also was the day that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, was the day of his death, actually. That normally wouldn't be a happy celebration, but he asked it to be happy because what he did is he revealed in what's become known as the Idrei Zuta, it's interpreted as a small assembly, or it's more correctly interpreted as the small threshing floor. Threshing floor, in a sense, as was the Idrei Rabbah, the big threshing floor, threshing out the secrets of the Torah. And on that day, he revealed some very profound secrets in as they become known as the Idrei Zuta. And this Idrei Zuta, for those who are at the level to understand it and read it, learn it, it's suggested to be done this day. And anyway, it's a day of light because on that day, the supernal light, the holy light that permeated the world in the first 6 days until Adam and Chava committed a sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, ate to dust of Tov and Ra, was there present, and the share of it's done. And as Rav Shimon Bar Yochai in the introduction to the Idrei Zuta says, not only was he listening, not only were the people around him, it's now around listening in that area, but even more so, the gates of heaven were open. The Siddiqim, the righteous people in the next world, were listening. The angels were listening, and even the Shekhinah, the Hashem's presence. She usually thought it was female presence, though male and female did not extend to God, obviously, in any human sense. It's one united God, but his different qualities are expressed in different ways for our understanding. He, in the event, the day was lengthened. This only happened one other time to Yehoshua during a battle, but it lengthened literally. Hashem delayed sunset until he had finished his teachings. Now, our parsha this week doesn't seem to have that much of an obvious connection to it, but what is the parsha talking about? Last two parshas, which were read as a double parsha, Akri Mos Kodshim, was telling people how to be forgiven of sins on Yom Kippur, then talked about all the things we had to do to purify ourselves. The second, which I spoke about at length last week, and the second parsha was still telling us we have to be kodesh, we have to be holy. This week's parsha starts with all the obligations of the Kohanim, Aaron and the sons and their descendants, which both in who they can marry, when it was proper for them to approach, which Kohanim who had certain deformities were excluded, were able to eat from it, but were not able to bring the sacrifices. It then goes on to discuss all the Jewish holidays, including, interestingly enough, Sfiras Omer, counting of the Omer, and ends with the incident of the child of the Israelite woman whose father was a Mitzri, not through any intention by her, and he blasphemed Hashem his name, and therefore was Shem commanded that he be killed. Now, none of this in the Parsha seems to have much of a connection to the concepts they talked about. Shimon Bar Yochai brought about the higher spiritual worlds and Hashem's, how Hashem's presence permeates all the levels of the four worlds. However, if based, and this is largely based on Orach Chaim, if one looks at the Besukim, it is talking about who can eat from the sacrifices that the Kohen is given. And it starts with, and it says in Pasuk 10 in chapter 22, Ki B'kol zar lo achul kodesh toshav Kohen v'saker lo yachol kodesh. Any non-Kohen shall not eat of the holy, means the sacrifices, and other things that the Kohanim are given. One who resides with a Kohen or his hired hand shall not eat of the holy. And Kohen ki nakna nefesh kinyan kaspu shehu alkobo liyalid beso and heim iklu balakmo. And if a Kohen shall acquire a person or an acquisition, his money may eat from it, the holy food, and someone born in his home, they may eat of the food. Then it goes on. Bat Kohen he tiel leizar he betrumat kodeshim lo tochel. And it then says, if a Kohen's daughter shall be married to a non-Kohen, she may not eat of the separated holies. And then it says, and Bat Kohen shehi tiyeh almana or gerusha, any Kohen's daughter will become a widow or divorcee, and Zera lo, ein lo, she has no children, Shabal beis aviv, she may come to her father's house, and Naroa, as in a youth, Malechem aviha tochel kol zar lo tochel, and she may eat from her father's food. Now, again, this seems quite technical. However, as the Orach Chaim is going to explain, if one looks in the term of remez, illusion, a greater in-depth meaning, I will hopefully show the tie-in. Now, to introduce this, the Orach Chaim has three introductions, three themes. One, how does the spiritual structure of the soul, the effects of doing the righteous things, doing Torah and mitzvahs, and the effects of sin upon the soul. And then he's going to go explain the verses. Now, just to partially summarize his introduction, he first of all explains that the members of the Jewish nation are on a higher level, born in Gemara, than that of the angels. Now, how is that? He explains that because we have free will and we can get ourselves elevated to a higher level. And how do we know that? And also says that Hashem created four worlds, spiritual worlds. And we're dealing with here worlds which he'll explain briefly in a second: Atzilut, Brera, Yetzira, and Asiya. Now, he then quotes a pasuk to explain how that works, but he gets it out of a pasuk in Yeshayahu and Yeshaya. And how are these worlds, many of these higher spiritual worlds, our world, Asiya, is the lowest part of the world of Asiya, spiritual world. And he explains that it's the light of Hashem that provides a co-op for all these worlds and provides for a fee from which our neshamas, Jewish people's neshamas, feed from. It's also the meaning of the word Yud Kei Vav Kei is an efiul name, which the Yud is the world of Itzilus, the first Hey is the world of Reira, and the second, the Vav is the world of Yetzirah, and the second Hey is the world of Yetzirah, ours. Now, that is also our life source. Also, this energy is what powers Shem through these energies and these worlds. Also creates miracles. Now, he also explains what is parallel to those. What is another one of his creations is the 4 levels of this human soul. And what are the aspects? They're briefly, one's called Nefesh, that's the lowest level. That's equivalent to the world of Yitzhak. Then there's Ruach, that's the next world up, equivalent to Yetzirah formation. The next world up is Brera, is equivalent to the Neshama itself. And then there's a higher level that's outside, totally outside of our bodies, which is called Chia, which is in equivalent to the world of Atzilut. In any event, proportion of the nefesh, which is the lowest level, is far more tied into the material world, and the neshama is tied and very little spiritual. As we go up to the next one, ruach, which is in the higher world, is more spiritual until we get through the other two, brera, and then it's Atzilus, world of emanations. There it is pure. It's pure. It's called the neshama of the neshama. That's where all of it comes from. And if we're doing what we're supposed to be spiritually and physically, we'll reach the potential of all of those. And therefore, the more we go into spiritual things, unless we go into physical things, the greater we'll be. Closer we'll be to God, the Shem. And how does one elevate from one level of the neshama to the other and get to more and more spiritual? That's through studying and observing the Torah, the mitzvahs of the Torah, the commandments, and helps the soul rise from one level to another. So, for example, Nefesh will go up to Ruach, Ruach to Neshama, and Neshama to Kia. And that's why we were created to do that. And by doing that, this is not mentioned in the Orach Chaim per se, but by doing that, we're helping to raise the whole universe and ultimately do a tikkun that will allow the coming of Mashiach and the ultimate Shabbat and reunification of the lower worlds with the upper worlds. Now, the nourishment, spiritual nourishment we get is called Kodesh. And one can elevate his soul by getting more and more, as I said, into those mitzvahs. He goes into some extensive detail. But that is the basic summary. Now, what the Vera is doing, sin does, has the opposite effect. on a person and does it fades the light of the neshama, it lowers the neshama, the highest, the ruach and siyah, and it keeps them away. And who is an example of that? It's like they give the marshal a parable of somebody who invites the king to his house, the king of the country, then he throws him out. Now, with this introduction, the Orach Chaim then goes on to speak. When we say a holy, anyone outside should not eat of a holy. The reverse is referring to two kinds of holy things. One is the Kodesh Korbanot, the holiness of the Korbans, and the second we'll have one remez is the spiritual bounty that Hashem provides to the children of God, Jewish people. So those who are outside are not included in this assimilation of spiritual nutrients. Now, when it talks about toshav, or a hired hand, a toshav is somebody who resides with the Kohen, and the other one is a servant. And what are they alluding to? You're alluding to the ruach and nefesh of the soul. For the ruach is the toshav of a Kohen, meaning the seed of a Kohen. Now, what is a Kohen? We're talking here very elevated. It's the level, it's the seed, and it's the ruach. Tosha means ruach, the ruach, but somebody who resides with the Kohen, he does get to eat from it, or somebody who's bought for money, because that neshama is in effect, that's the level of neshama. And Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, who's subject of Lag BaOmer, if one does not get to the level of ruach, of neshama, they don't merit it. Now, when it says a Kohen shall acquire nefesh, what's it talking about? His meaning is the lofty neshama, which is it's called the Kohen. Requires an acquisition of money, you may eat of it, someone born in this home. It means their elevation. Now, we're talking about somebody who's born into his home. It refers to this to certain holy neshamas that fell into the impurities when Adam and Chava committed their sin. And how are they extracted from these klipos as impure forces? By the good acts of the righteousness. The righteous acts like a magnet, and that's why they're close to the Kohen. That's the allusion there. And finally, what about the Kohen's daughter? When it says that married a non-Jew, a non-Kohen, the Zar, a stranger, it means non-Kohen, because it's Kohen, the priestly class, Levium, ones who assist in the temple, and Israelim, the rest of us, the rest of the people. And the Kohen's daughter represents the neshama, that highest level. Now, if it chases after goes after the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, and desires that, then it's separated. Now, in the same neshama, separates itself from the Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, then they will merit it again. And divorcee and widow was talking about different types of estrangement from Hashem, and when one comes back, one can do it. And so if somebody is either clinging to that or they're an outsider, they don't merit it. But from what we learn of this, we all have the potential, even if we're not going in priestly class, we all have the potential of getting closer and closer to Hashem and linking to Him. And this is what we are supposed to be observing this day. It's a day for praying for all kinds of things and that we need. And also, as we get closer and closer to getting closer to Torah mitzvahs and those who can, getting into the more elevated Sforim, Zohar and what have you, or whatever else they can learn, it all helps. We're going to merit getting closer and closer connection. And what we got a glimpse of, the holy light of that day of Omer should reach its full potential, and we should soon merit the ultimate redemption. Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, and may one have a very meaningful Lag BaOmer today.